Christmas Eve, the city radiant in a sea of lights. Eva Marshall, resilient but weary at 28, stood at her apartment window, watching celebrations bloom in every direction. Families gathered, couples walked hand in hand, friends filled restaurants with laughter. Everyone had someone, everyone except her. She grabbed her deep green coat, walked out into the cold. The retro diner 2 blocks over glowed with warmth despite its modest size. She slipped inside, drawn by something she couldn't name. A few scattered customers, tired waitstaff, the smell of coffee and cinnamon. She took a seat at the counter. Then the glass door swung open with a jingle of bells. A man in an expensive charcoal sweater stepped inside, his hand protectively on the shoulder of a small girl in a festive red dress with candy cane tights. The girl's brown eyes widened at the twinkling Christmas lights strung along the diner's walls. The man's face carried the weight of distraction, even as his daughter tugged at his sleeve with excitement. Eva's carefully constructed walls were about to crumble in the most unexpected way. Before we begin, I'd love to know where in the world you're reading this from. Now, let's start. Eva Marshall had built her resilience through years of navigating systems that weren't designed for women who looked like her, measuring her worth by her independence and her ability to need no one, convinced that vulnerability meant weakness and connection meant risk she couldn't afford. At 28 years old, she'd earned respect in her field through sheer determination and countless hours when others went home to families and friends. Her reputation for competence matched only by the emotional fortress she'd constructed around herself, brick by careful brick. Christmas Eve found her exactly where she'd spent the previous 3 holidays since her family had grown distant through misunderstanding and unspoken hurt. Alone in her modest apartment with tea she barely tasted, and streaming services playing movies she didn't really watch. The seasonal joy erupting throughout the city, feeling like a party she hadn't been invited to, celebrations happening in a language she'd forgotten how to speak. The decision to leave her apartment and venture into the decorated streets came from restlessness rather than any real hope for connection. Her chosen solitude suddenly feeling suffocating in ways it typically didn't, despite being her deliberate protection against disappointment. She walked without clear destination through neighborhoods transformed by holiday lights, glimpsing families through steamed windows, sharing traditions that Eva had lost years ago when life's complications consumed her capacity for the kind of tender bonds that Christmas supposedly celebrated, the kind that required trust she'd learned not to give. The 24-hour diner occupied a corner Eva passed regularly but had never entered, the establishment serving exactly the kind of comfortable, unpretentious atmosphere she typically avoided in favor of efficiency and isolation. But something about the golden lights visible through fogged windows and the promise of simple human activity drew her inside. Despite knowing she might feel conspicuous in her elegant coat among late-night workers and insomniacs who clearly spent their holidays differently than women who'd chosen loneliness over the risk of being left behind. The diner was sparsely populated, just a weary waitress refilling napkin dispensers and a college student typing furiously on a laptop while nursing cold coffee. Eva settled at the counter with hot tea she didn't particularly want, her presence in this space feeling performative rather than authentic, like she was playing at being someone who sought comfort in ordinary places during lonely holiday evenings, instead of someone who'd simply run out of places to hide. The door opened with a blast of winter air and the cheerful jingle of bells someone had hung for the season, admitting a man and a small girl whose contrasting energies were immediately apparent. The man was perhaps early 30s, impeccably dressed in a way that spoke of wealth and taste. Yet his expression carried a distraction, that suggested his mind was elsewhere entirely, likely on spreadsheets or strategies or anything but the present moment. The girl appeared to be around 6 years old, her face lighting up with pure delight at the modest Christmas decorations strung throughout the diner's interior, her festive outfit suggesting someone had dressed her with care, even if the joy seemed one-sided. "Daddy, look at the lights!" the girl exclaimed, pointing at the colorful bulbs with enthusiasm that suggested such simple displays represented enchantment rather than the diner's modest attempt at holiday spirit. "They're beautiful, just like the ones in the story." The man smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes, his attention already drifting as he guided his daughter toward a booth. "Very nice, Sonia," he murmured, the words automatic rather than engaged, his hand already reaching for the phone in his pocket, before he seemed to remember where he was and stopped himself. Ava found herself watching them with unexpected attention, noting the way the girl kept glancing up at her father with hopeful expectation, trying to draw him into her world of wonder, while he remained caught in whatever concerns occupied successful men who brought their children to diners on Christmas Eve instead of celebrating at home. The disconnect between father and daughter created an ache in Eva's chest, recognition of loneliness that existed even in togetherness. Isolation that wealth and family couldn't cure. "Evening, folks. What can I get you?" the waitress asked, approaching with a coffee pot and a tired smile that suggested she'd been working since early morning and still had hours before her shift ended on this holiday night. The girl pulled out a handmade Christmas card from her small purse, the construction paper and glitter clearly assembled with devotion, and held it out to her father with shy pride. "I made this for you, Daddy, for Christmas." The man took it with a distracted glance, his smile polite but distant. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Thank you." He set it aside without really looking at it, his attention already back on scanning the menu. "Hot chocolate for Sonia, please, and coffee for me." Eva watched the girl's face fall, just slightly, the dimming of hope that children learn to hide when they're used to divided attention. Something in that moment broke through Eva's carefully maintained distance, the recognition that she wasn't the only one spending Christmas Eve feeling unseen, unheard, overlooked by a world too busy to notice. Before conscious decision could intervene, Eva found herself speaking up from her position at the counter, her voice softer than she'd intended. "Excuse me," she said, addressing the girl directly while her father's attention was still on the menu. "That's a beautiful card. Did you make it yourself?" The girl's face brightened immediately, gratitude for being noticed radiating from her expression. "Yes, I used all Daddy's favorite colors. See the gold star? That's because he's a star." The man looked up, seeming to truly see both the card and his daughter for the first time since they'd arrived. Something flickered across his face, recognition perhaps, or maybe shame. He met Eva's eyes across the diner, and in that moment, two strangers acknowledged a shared truth about the ways people could be lonely, even when they weren't alone. "I'm sorry," he said quietly to his daughter, picking up the card again, this time really looking at it. "You're right. This is beautiful. Thank you, Sonia." Then, to Eva, with a slight nod of acknowledgement, "And thank you for paying attention when I wasn't." The waitress, sensing the shift in atmosphere, smiled warmly. "I'll get those drinks started. You folks let me know if you need anything else." Sonia, emboldened by Eva's kindness, slid out of the booth and approached the counter with the fearlessness of children who haven't yet learned about stranger danger. "Why are you sitting alone?" she asked with the direct honesty only kids could pull off. "It's Christmas Eve. Don't you have anyone to be with?" "Sonia," her father said gently, rising to guide her back, though he didn't sound genuinely concerned, more like he was performing expected parental correction. Ava surprised herself by answering honestly, "I don't, actually. Not tonight. So I came here, hoping maybe the lights would make me feel a little less alone." Sonia considered this with the seriousness of someone weighing an important decision. Then she announced, with the confidence of someone used to being heard even when she wasn't being listened to, "You should sit with us. Nobody should be alone on Christmas. That's a rule." The man, Mark, extended his hand with a slight smile that reached his eyes this time, transformation subtle but real. "I'm Mark. This determined young lady is my daughter Sonia, and apparently she's decided you're joining us. If you'd like to, of course, no pressure." Eva felt the walls she'd built starting to crack, felt the dangerous warmth of possibility seeping through. She could say no. She should say no. But Sonia's hand was already reaching for hers, and something about this moment felt like standing at a threshold she'd been avoiding for years. "I'm Eva," she said, sliding off the counter stool and following Sonia to the booth, carrying her tea like a talisman. "And I think your daughter might be the wisest person in this diner." Sonia beamed, sliding into the booth beside her father and patting the opposite seat for Ava. "I know. Daddy says I'm too smart for my own good sometimes." Mark's expression carried a complexity Eva couldn't quite read. Layers of grief and hope and exhaustion, all mixed together. "She is," he agreed quietly. "She sees things I miss, like beautiful cards I don't look at closely enough, or people who need company on Christmas Eve." The waitress returned with drinks, and as steam rose from Eva's fresh tea and Sonia's chocolate, the girl looked between the two adults with satisfaction. "There! Now nobody's alone." Ava felt tears threatening, unexpected, and unwelcome. When was the last time someone had simply noticed she existed? When was the last time she'd let anyone close enough to see her loneliness? She wrapped her hands around the warm mud, anchoring herself in the moment. "Why are you alone?" Sonia asked, with the innocent directness of someone who hadn't yet learned that some questions cut deeper than intended. "Don't you have family or friends who want to spend Christmas with you?" Mark cleared his throat, rescuing Eva from the weight of Sonia's question. "My daughter hasn't quite mastered the art of polite small talk," he said with a gentle smile that suggested he was grateful for that fact. "But if you're willing to share, we're willing to listen. No judgment in this booth." Eva found herself answering with honesty she hadn't planned on offering strangers. "My family and I, we drifted apart. Distance, misunderstandings, the kind of hurt that builds up slowly, until suddenly you realize you're calling each other out of obligation rather than joy. I thought I was fine with it. Turns out Christmas Eve has a way of showing you what you've been hiding from." Sonia reached across the table and patted Eva's hand with the unself-conscious compassion of children who haven't learned to be afraid of other people's pain. "That's very sad. But you're here now, so maybe it's not too late to stop being sad." Mark's expression shifted, something vulnerable breaking through the polished exterior. "Sonia's mother passed away 2 years ago," he said quietly. "Cancer. She fought hard, but—" He paused, his hand covering his daughter's. "I've been so focused on work, on keeping everything together, that I forgot how to actually be present. Sonia deserves better than a father who's physically here but mentally absent." "You're here now too, Daddy," Sonia said, echoing her own wisdom back to him. That's what Miss Eva did. She came here to stop hiding. The waitress returned to take their dinner orders, and Ava noticed an elderly man at a corner booth, his weathered hands wrapped around a coffee cup, staring at a piece of pie he was eating in slow, deliberate bites. The kind of slow that suggested he was stretching the meal to stretch the company, making a single slice last as long as the diner would let him stay. When the waitress turned to check on the old man, Eva caught her attention. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "Whatever that gentleman's bill is, add it to mine. And if he'd like more coffee or another slice, please bring it. On me." She thought she'd been discreet, but Mark had been watching. After the waitress left, he studied Eva with new interest. "That was kind. You didn't have to do that." Eva shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "It's Christmas Eve. He's alone. I know what that feels like. Sometimes the smallest gesture matters most." When their food arrived, Eva reached for her wallet, but the waitress shook her head with a knowing smile. "Already taken care of, miss. The gentleman at your table insisted." Mark met her surprised look with quiet warmth. "Kindness should be reciprocal. You reminded me of that tonight." As they ate, conversation flowed with unexpected ease. Eva shared stories of her career struggles. Mark admitted his regrets about prioritizing boardrooms over bedtime stories, and Sonia filled the spaces between with observations that were far too perceptive for a 6-year-old. When the meal ended, Sonia grew serious, her small hand reaching for Eva's. "Will you come home with us, just for tonight? We have a Christmas tree and everything. You shouldn't go back to being alone. None of us should." Eva's instinct was to decline, to retreat to her safe solitude. But Mark's hopeful expression matched his daughter's, and something in Eva's chest cracked open further. "Are you sure?" Eva asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sure," Sonia declared. "Daddy?" Mark nodded, his smile genuine. "We'd be honored. Sometimes family isn't who you're born to. Sometimes it's who shows up on Christmas Eve and reminds you what matters." Eva felt tears threatening again, but this time she let them come. The drive to Mark's penthouse passed in comfortable silence. Sonia nestled between them in the back seat while a driver navigated the snowy streets. Eva watched the city transform into something magical through the frost-edged windows, feeling like she'd stepped into someone else's life, someone braver, someone more open to possibility. Mark's penthouse occupied the top floor of a glass tower that pierced the skyline. The elevator ride was long enough for Eva's nerves to return, doubt whispering that she'd made a mistake, that she didn't belong in this world of wealth and privilege. But then Sonia's hand found hers, small fingers squeezing with reassurance, and Eva steadied herself. The apartment was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city, designer furniture arranged with precision, a Christmas tree that must have cost thousands standing in perfect symmetry near the window. Yet something about the space felt hollow, like a showroom rather than a home. The decorations were flawless but impersonal, expensive but empty of the warmth that made Christmas feel like Christmas. "It's beautiful," Eva said, because it was true, even if incomplete. "It's lonely," Mark admitted, helping her with her coat. "I hired decorators. They made it look perfect, but Sonia was right when she said it doesn't feel like the pictures in her storybooks. It doesn't feel lived in. It doesn't feel loved." Sonia was already at the tree, rearranging ornaments with determined purpose. "We need music," she announced, "and hot chocolate, and stories. That's what makes Christmas real." What followed was unlike anything Eva had experienced in years. Mark put on a jazz rendition of Christmas classics, and they settled in the living room with mugs of hot chocolate Sonia insisted they make together, marshmallows bobbing on the surface. The formality of the space dissolved as they shared stories, Eva's memories of childhood Christmases when her grandmother would make sweet potato pie and the house would smell like cinnamon and love. Mark's confession that success had cost him more than he'd realized, that the higher he climbed professionally, the more isolated he became personally. "I built an empire," Mark said, staring into his mug, "but I forgot to build a life. My wife saw it happening, warned me. I thought I had time to fix it. Then she was gone, and I realized I'd been trading presents for profit. And now Sonia's growing up with a father who's there, but not really there." "You're here now," Eva said softly, echoing Sonia's earlier wisdom. "That's what matters. That's what she'll remember." Sonia had been quiet, listening with the intensity children employ when adults speak truth. Then she disappeared into her room, returning moments later with something wrapped in tissue paper, her expression solemn. "Mommy made this," she said, placing it in Ava's hands. It was her favorite ornament. She said it reminded her that even broken things can be beautiful if you put them together with love. Ava unwrapped it carefully, revealing a delicate glass ornament, clearly handmade, with pieces of colored glass arranged in a mosaic pattern that caught the light and scattered tiny rainbows across her palms. It was breathtaking. "Sonia, I can't," Eva started, tears spilling over. "Mommy would want you to have it," Sonia insisted, her own eyes glistening. "She always said Christmas was about sharing what matters most with people who need it. You need it, Miss Eva. You need to remember you're not broken. You're just waiting to be put back together." Eva pulled Sonia into an embrace, then felt Mark's arms around them both, the three of them holding each other as snow began to fall outside the windows, covering the city in silence and grace. In that moment, the penthouse transformed. No longer a showroom, but a sanctuary. No longer empty, but filled with the only things that ever really mattered: connection, courage, and the willingness to let broken hearts heal together. Eva woke to unfamiliar softness, momentarily disoriented by the Egyptian cotton sheets and the pale morning light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. The guest room was serene and elegant, but what pulled her fully awake was the sound of laughter drifting from somewhere in the penthouse. Sonia's bright giggles, punctuated by Mark's deeper chuckle. She found them in the kitchen, Sonia perched on a stool, wearing pajamas decorated with reindeer, while Mark, still in his sleep-rumpled t-shirt and sweatpants, attempted to flip pancakes with varying degrees of success. The domesticity of the scene made Eva's heart ache with unexpected longing. "Miss Eva!" Sonia spotted her first, scrambling down to wrap her arms around Eva's waist. "It's Christmas morning. Daddy's making breakfast, but he's not very good at it. We need your help." Mark raised his spatula in mock surrender. "She's not wrong. I can negotiate billion-dollar deals, but apparently pancakes are beyond my skill set." Eva laughed, the sound surprising her with its ease. "Move over. Let me show you how it's done." They cooked together, the three of them navigating the kitchen in a dance that felt practiced despite being brand new. Sonia insisted on adding chocolate chips to the batter. Mark burned the bacon only slightly, and Eva made scrambled eggs that actually turned out fluffy. They ate at the counter rather than the formal dining table, Sonia swinging her legs and chattering about presents and snow, and whether Santa had managed to find Eva at their address. After breakfast, they exchanged gifts. Sonia presented Eva with a drawing she'd made that morning: 3 stick figures holding hands under a Christmas tree, labeled Daddy, Me, and Miss Eva. Mark gave Eva a beautifully wrapped book of poetry by Maya Angelou, somehow intuiting she'd love it. Eva, having nothing to give, felt embarrassed until Mark stopped her. "You gave us the greatest gift already," he said quietly. "You reminded us we're not alone. That's worth more than anything money can buy. Later, while Sonia played with her new toys, Eva noticed papers spread across Mark's home office desk. Donor agreements, charity proposals, foundation documents. Mark found her looking and didn't seem bothered by her curiosity. "I've been thinking," he said, leaning against the doorframe, "about what you did last night at the diner. That man, you saw him, really saw him, in a way I've stopped seeing people. I donate to charities, sure, but it's transactional. What you did was personal. It mattered." Eva turned to face him. "What are you thinking?" "A foundation, specifically focused on women spending holidays alone. Emergency support, community connections, resources. You made me realize how many people are invisible, especially during times when everyone's supposed to have somewhere to belong." He paused, hope and uncertainty mingling in his expression. "Would you want to partner with me? Help build something that could actually change lives?" Eva felt something ignite in her chest. Purpose, possibility, the sense that her pain might become someone else's healing. "Yes, absolutely yes." Sonia appeared in the doorway, holding a folded piece of paper. "I wrote a letter to Santa," she announced. "But it's really for you, Miss Eva." Eva unfolded it, her vision blurring as she read the careful child's handwriting. "Dear Santa, I don't want toys. I want Miss Eva to be part of our family forever. She makes Daddy smile, real smiles. She makes me feel like Mommy's still here in the love. Please let her stay. Love, Sonia." Mark read over her shoulder, his hand finding Eva's. "You don't have to answer now," he whispered. "But know that we want this. Whatever this becomes." Eva looked between them. This man and this child who'd somehow become essential in less than 24 hours, and felt her carefully constructed walls crumble completely. "I want this too," she said. "I want to stay." 1 year later, Eva stood in the community center transformed for the evening, watching volunteers arrange tables laden with food, checking in guests, distributing gift bags filled with resources and hope. The banner stretched across the stage read, "Haven and Home Foundation, because no one should be alone," and beneath it, photographs of women who'd been helped through the past months, meals shared, connections made, lives quietly transformed. Mark appeared at her side, adjusting his tie with the nervous energy she'd learned meant he was proud, but trying not to show it. "Nervous?" he asked, though his smile suggested he already knew the answer. "Terrified," Eva admitted, smoothing down her emerald dress, the same color she'd worn that Christmas Eve, now a kind of talisman. "What if no one comes? What if this doesn't matter the way we hoped?" "It already matters," Mark said, gesturing to the room filling with women of all ages. Volunteers greeting them with warmth. The tangible sense of community being woven in real time. "You built this, Eva. You turned your loneliest night into someone else's lifeline." Sonia rushed over, now 7 and somehow even more perceptive than before, wearing a red velvet dress and her mother's ornament on a chain around her neck, a tradition Eva had helped her establish. "Miss Eva, the reporters want to talk to you. Can I come too?" The press interview was brief but pointed. A journalist asked Eva about the foundation's origin, and she found herself transported back to that diner, that moment when a little girl had decided no one should be alone. "A year ago, I was convinced I was fine with isolation," Eva said, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to break through. "I'd built walls so high I couldn't see over them anymore. Then I met a stubborn 6-year-old and her father who were just as lost as I was, and they reminded me that connection isn't weakness, it's survival. It's everything. Mark stepped forward, his hand finding the small of her back in the casual intimacy they'd developed over months of late-night planning sessions that became dinner dates, foundation meetings that became family time. Ava saw me when I couldn't see myself. She saw my daughter when I was too distracted to truly see her. This foundation is her heart made visible. The formal program began. Women sharing testimonies of holiday seasons no longer spent in painful solitude, of friendships formed through the Foundation's connection programs, of renewed purpose found in volunteer work and community support. Eva watched, tears streaming freely, as the work they'd poured themselves into proved its worth in story after story of transformation. Then Sonia took the microphone, unplanned and unscripted, with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted she'd be heard. I want everyone to know that Miss Eva isn't just the founder of this place. She's my family. She's my dad's. Well, they haven't figured out all the words yet. But she's ours, and we're hers, and that's what this is about. Finding your people. Finding your home. The room erupted in applause, but Eva only saw Sonia's beaming face, Mark's eyes glistening with tears that matched her own. She pulled them both into an embrace as cameras flashed and the crowd cheered. The three of them holding each other amid twinkling lights, and the community they'd built from their shared loneliness. Later, as the event wound down and volunteers cleaned up around clusters of women still deep in conversation, unwilling to let the evening end, Eva stood at the window, watching snow begin to fall, just like it had that first night. Mark wrapped his arms around her from behind, Sonia pressed against her side. "Ready to go home?" he asked softly. Eva leaned into him, into them, into the family she'd found when she'd stopped running from connection. "Yeah," she whispered. "Let's go home." Because home, she'd learned, wasn't a place. It was the courage to be seen, the grace to be vulnerable, and the love that bloomed in the spaces where walls used to be.